Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Inner World podcast. I am your host, Dr. Pedro Cortina. In this podcast, we aim to explore the most powerful, efficient, joyful, and sustainable models of inner transformation out there. Thank you for joining us today. Let's talk about clarity today. Clarity. Clarity is when our way of engaging with the world is free of internal polarization, internal separation, internal doubt. And again, like many other concepts we've explored, it is not something that we fabricate. It's not something that we layer up. Clarity is not something that we build. Clarity is something that shows up. It manifests spontaneously when we are self-aligned. The obstacles to clarity, I've mentioned a few. Polarization is definitely one of them. Polarization is that experience we have when a part of us is very eager to move in one direction and another part of us is either doubtful, not eager, or just plain opposed to that. And this is quite common in our human condition. If we take the time to go inside from time to time, do our exploration practice in our inner world, we'll notice that we're full of different internal opinions about things, and in some cases, different internal opinions about one thing in particular, multiplied by several situations. And this is easily explainable when we understand a little bit more the multiplicity of our mind, the multiple nature of our mind. And when I say multiple nature of our mind, I'm pointing to this internal phenomenon where we seem to have particular sub-personalities. Some people refer to them as parts of us. Some people refer to them as different positions or centers of being or centers of awareness. And these parts or these sub-personalities are a result of our previous life experiences. When we go through hardship or tension or experiences of lack of safety when we are younger generally, it could happen at any age. But when we're younger generally, what happens is that a certain amount of energy becomes available to address that issue. And that energy is a form of awareness whose principal goal or mission is to support us in going through the challenge. And this happens in a way that is very, very subtle. It is very, very deep, but it's also very, very clear in the sense that our inner resources need to come together to address the challenge. And this creates what some practitioners call an energetic burden. Some other people refer to it as trauma. This energetic burden, what it does is that it tries its best, given the resources it has at the moment, at that age, to alleviate the challenge or to solve the challenge. And with this center of awareness generates certain assumptions about the world, about reality, about others that seem to become quite solid at the time as a survivalist mechanism. So, for example, if we're having an experience where we are in the water and something happens, there's a current or something, and we're experiencing that we're at risk of drowning, for example. This center of awareness that shows up for us in that moment will do everything it can to allow us to support our survival. And in doing that, it would generally pull on resources from what it's available to this center of awareness. In other words, if we're drowning, what's probably going to go through our mind is, first of all, how do I get out? How do I remove myself from this situation? And probably this center of awareness is going to look for all potential possibilities of support, crying for help, trying to see if there's somebody else around, trying to swim faster, and sometimes we get, enormous amounts of energy, and in many cases, people would probably report that the surge of energy was uncommon or beyond human, probably. And at the same time, this center of awareness that takes over also makes assumptions about the risk and about the world and about reality. So some of the assumptions that this center of awareness would probably make in a situation like that is water is dangerous, or swimming in the ocean is dangerous, or swimming on my own is dangerous, or going far out is dangerous, or going to swim without letting other people know or asking other people to keep an eye on us is dangerous. And these assumptions, as they happen in this critical moment, become intensified by the amount of energy that is there, and they tend to solidify in a way for our survivalist mechanisms to be sure that we're not at risk anymore. And so it's quite common that when something like this happens, if we make it out, of course, is that probably after that we will have second thoughts about swimming. We will not feel comfortable. We will second guess our capacity to probably get ourselves to safety if something goes wrong. And this could be something that it is embedded in our psyche. And probably it will be something that we will have to carry with us for some time, and in some ways limiting our capacity to experience life in the future, or other possibilities of interacting with water in different settings or in different environments. And you can apply this example to a great number of other situations that we may go through in life. This example is very fact-based, and it is about survival, and it is about water, etc., etc. But when we explore how our mind works when it comes to survivability, our mind is not only looking for physical impediments to survival. It's not only looking for clear physical potential harm. It's also looking for emotional survivability or viability. There's a very clear link between emotional survivability and physical survivability. There's a very strong link between our capacity to be part of a group, to form part of a group, to be accepted in a group, with physical survivability as well. So what happens is that in many cases, our internal emotional world reacts in exactly the same way. So, for example, if we're young and we are living in a household where our parents are probably not very available to our emotional needs, what would tend to happen would be relatively similar to the drowning example I shared, but different in the sense that it would be focused around a sense of emotional survival. So in this case, for example, if a parent is not available, or a parent is going through emotional turmoil, etc., etc., as a child, we would also feel that risk. Am I not good enough? Am I not lovable? Is there something wrong with me? And in many cases, this focus of energy, this focus of awareness that jumps in and does its very best to move us forward, will probably make some survivalist decisions around that situation. Like, you can't count on the adults. You can't count on the parents. You have to self-resource. You have to self-soothe. You have to find viability through your own capacity and your own means. And in these cases, what ends up happening is that these assumptions end up hardening as well. And that would be the traditional source of developing, for example, personality that is avoidant to their own feelings, to interacting with others, being excessively self-driven, self-oriented, to the point where having interaction or establishing relationships with others becomes problematic in the long run. So, for example, somebody that develops an avoidant attachment personality will tend to be reserved, will tend to not reciprocate as enthusiastically, will tend to be very careful around sharing their feelings, will tend to be very careful about being vulnerable with other people. And as we move forward in life with, for example, with this avoidant attachment style, it would be normally more problematic to engage with people in a secure and trusting way. And that would definitely be an obstacle in someone's life if it is too extreme, or if it gets in the way of simply enjoying other people. So when this is happening, regardless of the kind of inner polarization or inner burden that we're carrying, our tendency to view life would be through the lens of those assumptions, through the lens of that understanding that we at some point assumed, given that we were placed in a situation that felt unsafe or that felt unsupported. And so clarity is very difficult to access when most of our time awake is experienced through the lens of these polarizations, of these assumptions and projections that we have about the world, about others, and about ourselves. There are many assumptions that we build through these burdens, through these moments of crisis or just simple feeling unsafe, that also relate to who we are, our worth, our own capacity, our ability to manage the world. So if we go about our daily life with all these assumptions, our tendency will be to move around those centers of burdened awareness. And in those cases, accessing clarity becomes quite difficult, because most of what we do will be driven by those extreme or disproportionate assumptions, and probably even some level of reactivity around that. So how do we access clarity? We access clarity by not by pushing ourselves or forcing ourselves to be clear, because the only thing that's going to happen if we do that is we're going to layer up another expectation on top of the other assumptions that we have. We're going to add a layer or several layers. Now we need to be clear. Now we need to be whatever other attributes we think come with clarity. And the actual solution is, rather than forcing ourselves into clarity or forcing ourselves into a fabricated experience of knowing who we are and what we want, what we do is we actually work with the polarizations. We actually work with the centers of awareness that have been carrying these assumptions, these projections and these extreme or unrelatable circumstances that are pointing us into being careful or being afraid of things that are not really a problem anymore. So when we work with these internal instances of projection and we are able to solve those polarizations, clarity just comes natural. And how do we address those polarizations? And there are many ways to address those polarizations. One of them, which is quite powerful and quite efficient, is just becoming aware of them and allowing ourselves to completely open to them, to completely witness them, to be completely available to the assumption or the projection or the polarization without buying into it, without assuming it as real, and holding it in a space of witnessing, of awareness for enough time that it begins to naturally settle. And this is something we can do with every single internal experience of misalignment. Just notice the misalignment internally and open wide to experience it, to receive it, to be a witness of it, to hold it for as long as it's needed. As we do this, kindly and gently, the polarization will begin to soften, because this center of awareness that has been projecting harm or risk will suddenly be held in a wider structure or seen through a wider lens. And what generally happens is that as we welcome the inner misalignment and open fully to it, and we allow it to be held in our awareness, as we do that and hold it, it will begin to decrease, and naturally we will begin to start getting insight around the true nature of the condition. So let me give you an example, going back to the example of the child that was kind of left to their own devices emotionally. This is the experience. This child becomes completely self-reliable, self-soothing. Child grows up to experience or have an experience of life where the child is especially careful or weary or avoidant of any situations that are vulnerable or emotional. The solution is, or one solution, better said, one solution is, as we are in a situation like that, if that would be our case, and we're meeting someone else, for example, and we're walking to the meeting spot, and we sense this apprehension or this doubt or this fear around meeting someone. If we can take a moment and just open up to the experience Open up to the sensation of discomfort. Open up to the experience of misalignment. Open up to the to the experience of inner separation, and just allow ourselves to witness it, to welcome it, to hold it kindly and gently, without trying to push it away or fix it or solve it rationally. That generally never works. And just holding it kindly and gently with genuine heartfelt curiosity until it begins to soften. And as it begins to soften, we will naturally start noticing clarity. Oh, I'm just having a conversation, for example. Oh, I'm actually a little excited that I am willing now to be open to meet more people. Oh, I'm looking forward to this conversation. Oh, if something goes wrong or I don't feel at ease for whatever reason, I have my own resources. I can manage. I can support myself. If the situation is more intense, I can kindly and gently excuse myself or remove myself from the situation. And so, if you notice, we're moving from a very constrained, very tight approach to meeting someone new, for example. And as we hold that discomfort, and as we welcome it, and as we receive it, the edge starts to soften. And if we continue to be in this space of curiosity and openness, then clarity starts showing up. What we were not able to see because we were activated with our avoidant fears is now accessible to us. What we were not able to notice is something that we can now see. And this is a beautiful, beautiful gift we can give ourselves. And it applies to every single experience of inner misalignment or discomfort that we could have. This quality of clarity or self-alignment or zero space, as I sometimes call it, is something that can hold everything. This is this inner original space of ours where we can hold any possibility. And I don't mean by this we're a space inside of us where we're omnipotent or superhero-like. In many ways we are, but not necessarily in the way in which we would present ourselves as superior or more powerful than others. Rather, it is more of an inner space where we are confident that even if things do not go as planned, we are still holding capacity to engage. We are still holding capacity to understand what's going on. We're still holding capacity to move internally and externally in whatever way it is needed for our self-viability. And this experience often comes with additional insights or additional experiences again that are often beautiful ones. When we access clarity in this way, there can also be a sense of deep understanding about ourselves and others. There can be a sense of power in terms of our capacity to trust ourselves and move beyond any potential emotional constraint. There is also the possibility of experiencing genuine, heartfelt compassion for others, and probably even for the other person that's also meeting us for the first time, and also being able to connect and understand that there could be some apprehension there, and be connected and welcoming to that experience. So this process of identifying, opening up to witnessing, holding, and updating our hardened past assumptions that were made around disproportionate risk can be a beautiful, wonderful door to access some of the most exquisite, life-giving of human emotions, sensations, thoughts. So clarity appears naturally when our inner polarizations are actualized. Clarity appears naturally when we have the capacity to hold our reactivity in a compassionate and welcoming way. Clarity naturally appears when we are able to see the other person without our projections or our assumptions or our fears. And the power of clarity is one that gives us a sustained model to live a life that is whole, that is free, and that has a profound sense of purpose. So this is a beautiful exercise that is available to everyone that may be interested in practicing it. I've seen it with many of my clients. I've used it myself several times, and it is incredibly transformational. Thank you so much for joining us today, and have a wonderful rest of your day.